to everyone. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Desi from Clean Air Partnership, and together with my colleague Devanshi, we'll be hosting this webinar. With us is also Tom Lumsden, and I will introduce him shortly. But first, I wanted to share with you that Clean Air Partnership is a Toronto-based organization, and we acknowledge that the stolen land on which we operate is the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. At CAP, we recognize that many Indigenous peoples are particularly vulnerable to climate change and will be disproportionately impacted by its effects. Through our work, we are committed to disrupting ongoing approaches to climate governance that reproduce Southern colonial relations and systematically exclude Indigenous peoples from policymaking. Today, we are going to talk about a great example of decarbonized communities, but if you're interested in other municipal board implemented projects that reduce greenhouse gas reduction, you can check our climate action atlas, which currently features our Clean Air Council members. So it is Ontario based, but we are hoping to go beyond Ontario in the near future, and you can access it in the link provided in the chat. Our upcoming events on February 16 at 10:30, we're going to have a climate applications repository workshop. And on February 23rd from 1 p.m., this is Toronto time, Eastern time, panel discussion electrifying municipal fleet. You can stay tuned for more of our events on our website under the events webpage, and we're going to share the link in the chat, where you can scroll the other events and register for whenever you think it's interesting for you. And our guest speaker, Tom Lumsden, is the development manager for the Blatchford Redevelopment project in Edmonton. With over 20 years of experience in land development in the public and private sectors, Tom brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise in developing land and project management to the role. He has extensive experience leading and facilitating land development for major projects in Edmonton. In the Blatchford role, Tom leads the team responsible for planning, building, and selling the community, which is planned to be one of the largest sustainable development projects in North America. Thank you, Tom, for being with us. And you can take away. And while you're sharing your screen, I just wanted to remind to everyone to write your questions in the Q&A box. And after the presentation, we'll have time to answer your questions. And Mel,
there we go.
You see the screen of Mel? I'm not yet.
My computer started to go slow. I was getting worried. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you well. And Mel,
Great.
you can try again to share the screen. Mel Garcia is here helping us with on the back end.
Yeah, Mel works with me. Yeah, thank you, Desi, for the introduction. Yeah, as you said, I'm Tom Lumsden, and I'm super happy to be here today. I'm lucky enough to be working on Blatchford, which is we use cliche once in a lifetime opportunity to build something cool in the middle of oil and gas country, a sustainable community, which when we're done could be one of the largest in the world, but probably the largest in North America. It's 536 acres. So while I know I look super young, I'm old enough to talk in acres instead of hectares. I think it's 217 hectares. I don't default to that. But it was the old airport. Once the presentation comes up, you'll see figures that match what I'm saying. It was an airport that was in the middle of Edmonton, 10 minutes from downtown. So that's the once in a lifetime opportunity to have that kind of landmass this close to the core of the city. I know I've had meetings with people in Downsview who have similar kind of opportunities, but this one, like all Alberta, we're bigger. There we go. Okay, thanks, Mel. So yeah, I've worked on the project for 5 years, just a little bit, I guess, more background. And so this has changed me. I did work for a private developer. I've been in land development since 97, so more than 20 years. But this has changed me as a person from being just a land developer to being a little bit sustainable. So the old dog, new tricks is working a bit. Anyway, this video we're about to show is our marketing video. So it's supposed to give you goosebumps, but we'll give you a minute to watch it so you can see what we're up to.
How do we want to live? How do we create community during a time of change? How do we build places for the people who would call them home? How do we take care of our neighbors? How do we think about what a neighborhood should be? How do we get around them, to and from them? How do we power our lives when power has been a part of the problem? How do we remember our past while respecting our future? How do we make sure it's accessible to everyone, socially, physically, economically? How do we want to live? We're building a neighborhood where we can find the answers. Renewable infrastructure, sustainable design, historic, central, Blatchford. Urban design that's never been tried in Canada. A community that's never been tried like this anywhere in the heart of Edmonton.
We liked it so much, we'll show it twice. One of the presentations is part of my job, and I really enjoy doing it. This morning, I was actually at the air traffic control tower with what they call City Hall School, so grade 4 and 5 students. And this same presentation, I did a grade 2 class once, a master's university class. You just speak a little differently to it, but yeah, replaying the video is commonplace. Made the kids laugh whenever I get there. Anyway, we'll get to the presentation. So 1927 was the first licensed airstrip in Canada, making it the oldest airport in Canada. And if you look on the left, the guy with the fedora was the mayor at the time, and his name was Kenneth Blatchford. So that's where the Blatchford name comes from. In 2008, so if anybody's familiar with Edmonton, we have the International Airport. It was built in 1960. The intention was that all air traffic would end up there. It took 48 years for Edmonton to decide that that was a real thing. So in 2008, there was a vote, and they decided to close the downtown airport. 2013, November 30th, 2013, the last airplane took off. And the next year we came in, obviously the team before me, and started demolishing the airport. And by 2018, we had lots ready for sale. So it's a journey to get from 1927 to 2008, obviously, and then to get from 2008 to 2018 to have saleable land, which, you know, if you're familiar with land development, isn't a long time, a decade. And the active airport within 7 years is even quicker. So we can go on to the next where we're at. So in 2010, and I mentioned what heart of oil and gas country. So 2010 is when they came up with this vision, and council approved it. 30,000 Edmontonians living, working, and learning in a sustainable community that uses 100% renewable energy and is carbon neutral. It's, I think back, and again, if you're familiar with Edmonton, we had a mayor that if you said the mayor picked this, you'd be like, really? He was a grumpy guy, whatever. Don't tell him I said that. But you wouldn't have thought, and the fact that climate crisis was not a thing, Edmonton wouldn't be where it is today without oil and gas. So literally, it was, to me, it's pretty awe-inspiring that council at that time decided this is what we're going to do with this once in a lifetime opportunity of 536 acres right in the middle of the city. Fast forward to 2018, 20, 22 climate crisis, like we look like we were smart back then. So kudos to Mayor Mandel and team for coming up with this. So when we talk about sustainability, this is what we focus on. And I know there's more arms to each of these branches, but I like to keep it as simple as I can. So we look at environmental, social, and financial. I work for the city of Edmonton. We are acting as the land developer. I did work for a private developer for over a decade. I'm treated the same theoretically as I was on the private side. So I still have to go through city process with approvals of my engineering drawings, development permits, everything else. But I'm paid by the same people as the development officers. But we, as the developer, have influence over all of these three things. And of course, the city being our investor or our board of directors, their vision can be upheld probably more so in terms of not having the financial pillar being the tallest one. So going through the three pillars, and I'm going to go into more details: environmental, obviously how we're dealing with the land; social, big influence we can have as the developer in terms of our zoning, our way things are laid out, our park spaces, our plans for commercial spaces within the community. And then of course, financial. I'm a citizen of the city of Edmonton. I don't want to see us sink a bunch of money in that's not going to come back. Our business plan shows that we're going to make money. But obviously, like I said before, the financial pillar on the private side is probably a little taller than it is in being on the public side. So social sustainability, we talk about big thing, and it only took me the better part of my whole career to figure out what people first design meant. I'm sure I used that term before, but didn't really fully comprehend. So building a suburban development, you know, have monowalk, you have big roads, you have places for cars to drive fast. In Blatchford, we put on our thinking cap and said, how can we make it so that people will opt to walk or ride their bike over driving a car? You can still have a car, 30,000 Edmontonians. Edmonton is very car centric. I went to school in Ontario, Waterloo. Some of my work terms were in Toronto. I lived in Toronto till I was 14. Getting around on public transit and walking downtown is probably easier than driving a car. In Edmonton, it's not the case. It's easier to drive. So we're really trying to shift the mindset of what people are doing. But in Blatchford, there are communities in Edmonton. I speak to a person that used to work with us. She used to live in suburbia. It was about 1.5 miles from a grocery store. She would always drive. She'd since moved in closer to the core of the city in the university area, still 1.5 miles from the local grocery store. She never drives because it's not convenient. So that's what we're trying to do in Blatchford. We're trying to make it so your option is you walk out the front door, your access to public transit, your access to amenities is there. So wider sidewalks, purpose-built bike lanes. We actually have boulevards between the bike lanes and the car carriageway. And then of course, boulevards between the walkways and the car carriageway and the bike lane. So, you know, there's lots of retrofitted bike lanes in Edmonton, which is, you know, a concrete barricade with a sign on it. And you're hoping the cars don't hop that curb and get you in. And really they've prioritized the bikes there too. But here we actually have a physical, you know, with trees and things going in there. Speak to some of the points. We have 2 LRT stops currently being built. The LRT in Edmonton is being expanded hugely as we speak. This one is currently under construction. 2024, it's going to be open. So we will have opportunity. If you have to leave Blatchford, which we don't want you to, you can walk to 2 LRT stops and get on it and get to other parts of the city. So again, as a developer, we're trying to do things that encourage people to stay in their homes, interact with their neighbors, building park spaces. So there's amenities right off the hop. Being locally located, our stage 1, there's a superstore and a Starbucks, like a 5-minute walking distance. And I challenge any private developer to have that amenity in stage 1. And of course, as we build out, they'll come into the community. So environmental sustainability, this is also things we can do as a developer, because we are the ones who kind of develop the land, put the infrastructure in, and then we turn it over to the other parts of the city to operate. And like I said before, we still have to go through the approval process so they know what they're getting. So one thing we talk about is our low impact development. This wouldn't be news to most people on this call, I'm sure. But in Blatchford, I remember being on the private side and some of the suburban guys tried to do some bioswales. Well, the city said we need a full system underneath because we're not fully there yet. I think as a kid growing up in Toronto, I lived in an area where we had ditches, which would be the old version of a bioswale. Water still goes, so I was confused why the city wouldn't just let that happen. But we have those in Blatchford. We have a storm pond and a naturalized wetland that's unusual for a central community. I'm sure it's the same in Toronto or major parts of Ontario. Suburban development, it's not unusual, but for downtown it is. So we've done that. We're working with our builders. So again, acting as the developer, we're selling lots to builders. And we have a green building code, which I'm going to talk to more going forward, but green roofs are part of that green building code and architectural controls that we have. So I can read off the list, but I don't think we need to. So that's some of the things we're doing. Going back to my comment about selling lots to builders. So we're not the home builder, but we're creating parcels that I mentioned we have custom zones. So one of the things our zone is similar to like a townhouse zone, for example, but the setback from the street is within 2 to 3 meters versus what the standard would be. So the idea there is the interaction between public and private space is more fluid. And again, trying to get people to interact with each other. But one thing we've done, so when we sell lots to the builders, as the municipality, as a regulator, we can only enforce like the Alberta code of the Canadian Building Code. As a developer, we can have a side agreement through our contracts that they will build what we call our green building code. So we've ramped up what you have to do from a regulatory perspective. And the builders, of course, have agreed contractually to do it. And I will high level talk about this. It's like more insulation in the ceiling and walls, insulating under the floor slab, low flow everything, high efficiency appliances, triple pane windows, same things you would probably be offered if you're building in the suburbs, and some people may opt to it. But granite or green is a term that's been around for a while. So typically when you produce here, if you give me $20,000 extra and we super insulate your home, or you can get granite countertops, most people are like, how much does gas cost? I think I'll go for the granite. So in Blatchford, you can still have granite, but you have to have the well-built home. So that's something that we've implemented in Blatchford. Other part of that, so going to our renewable energy as in our vision. I know Edmonton, it's very commonplace. I'm sitting in a home that's heated by gas. I have a furnace. In Blatchford, there's a bylaw that says you cannot heat or cool or hot water your house with gas. You have to use our district energy sharing system, or you have to prove you're carbon neutral on your own. So our district energy sharing system is a huge investment. It's a municipally owned utility that uses renewable energy to provide the heating and cooling and hot water for all the homes in Blatchford. So we have the picture you see on the screen is a heat pump. It's within our first energy center. We're going to have 5 or 6 of those when we're done. This is Energy Center 1. And our renewable source is GeoExchange. The one fun fact I've learned over the 5 years of working on the project, it's not geothermal, because geothermal is when you go down to, I like to use the term magma, which makes people laugh usually. But in Edmonton, that's 1.5 kilometers. Here we've gone 150 meters. We have 570 boreholes, 150 meters deep. And in Edmonton, that's 9 degrees all year round. So in the winter, we upgrade that to 10 to 20 degrees. We transfer that heat to water pipes. Every parcel has a connection to these water pipes, and they have a heat pump inside there where they regulate it for whatever makes them comfortable in their home. So, and the cool thing, of course, the heat pump works as air conditioning as well. It cools. So while they're expensive and unusual in an Edmonton perspective, you're saving money on not having a furnace and an air conditioner, which is good. And it's helping us sell what we're doing. But it is a forward-thinking thing and unusual from an Edmonton perspective. But we have some sustainable builders that are very much, they know exactly what's going on. And then we have more household name builders that, well, my mechanical guy will figure that out. So talking about our renewables, like I said, in stage 1, we have Geo Exchange, which is under our first storm pond. Future development, and actually 2/3 of our energy is going to come from this. There's 2 like 100-year-old sewers that are about 16 meters below Blatchford. They've been there for a long time, and we're going to dig down to them, and we're going to harvest the heat from the sewage. This isn't the first time this has been done, and our utility team is super excited about this. I usually make some off-color comment about it, but what it sounds like to me, but they promise we're only harvesting the heat, we're not harvesting the smell, but that's something we're going to have to deal with. So in future stages, and like I said, 2/3 of the energy we need for Blatchford is going to come from the sewer heat exchange. And then of course, solar photovoltaic, I don't know why I try to say that word every time. It's solar panels. We have those in Blatchford. This picture you see here is Energy Center 1, the outside. The previous one was the inside. We have solar panels on top of that to offset the electrical use that the heat pump inside there requires. So here's a video explaining what I just explained to you. So if there's a difference between what I said and what this says, probably believe the video.
Building one of the world's largest sustainable communities doesn't happen without a clear vision and commitment. Blatchford is being built from the ground up as a model for green, renewable, carbon-neutral planning and design. Blatchford's energy strategy focuses on 3 pillars: energy conservation through high-performance green buildings, energy efficiency driven by an innovative district energy sharing system, and the incorporation of renewable energy sources like geo-exchange, sewer heat recovery, and solar PV. Blatchford is supported by a district energy sharing system, which is a centralized system built in the community that distributes and shares heating and cooling energy throughout the neighborhood. Sharing energy between buildings can reduce overall energy consumption by 15 to 20% compared to traditional energy systems. The first stage of the district energy sharing system uses a geo-exchange field as its main renewable energy source. Blatchford's first geo-exchange field is located under one of our stormwater ponds and will support the first stages of residential development. Geo-exchange involves a system of underground boreholes that transfer heat to and from the ground, pulling the natural heat from the earth in the wintertime and transferring excess heat from buildings back into the ground in the summer. The first energy center will be the heart of the initial stage of Blatchford's district energy sharing system. Using heat pump technology, the Energy Center transfers energy from the geo-exchange field to homes and back again through a network of water pipes beneath the Blatchford roadways. Instead of a typical furnace or boiler system, each building will have a heat pump-based energy transfer station, which extracts the thermal energy from the district energy sharing system and upgrades it for the building's heating, cooling, and domestic hot water needs. Heat pumps upgrade energy more efficiently than a typical furnace, reducing Blatchford's greenhouse gas emissions compared to a business-as-usual community. By using a flexible approach and taking advantage of some of the most innovative and efficient technologies of today, Blatchford will help establish Edmonton as a leader in community-led renewable energy.
Oh, I was hopeful we weren't going to repeat the opening, but that was making me feel good because the students this morning thought it was funny. Okay, so I kind of mentioned this. The Blatchford Renewable Energy is a utility that's set up. It's regulated by the Utility Committee, which is a council committee, and it's owned by the City of Edmonton. And it has been. I know later on there's some talk about challenges. It's an expensive system. It's expensive to be green. I usually say you're saving the world, you're not saving money, which is important. But I think as we move forward with carbon tax and things like that, this is obviously going to prove that it's a very important initiative that's going to be kind of the sign of the future. And again, district energy is not new to Edmonton, but on this scale it is. I think when we're done, again, it's either the largest in the world or the largest in Canada for sure. when we're finished building out Blatchford, serving 536 acres of, and only using renewables for it. Anyway, we'll carry on. So comparing outcomes, I think we go back to my green building code. Blatchford homes will use about 1/3 of the energy that are required from a typical home. So again, going back to 30,000 Edmontonians living a sustainable lifestyle. If I compare this to when I was working on the private side, about 500 acres had about 8,000 people. So we're 3 or 4 times as many. So with that in mind, the biggest thing currently you can buy in Blatchford is a townhome. So it'll be townhomes, 4 to 6 story apartment style, and then some 12 to 15 story buildings. Our commercial component of Blatchford is going to be a mixed use village. So again, 2 or 3 floors of commercial with either office or residential above. But the reason this is townhouse to townhouse is that's the reason we need to have efficient, dense developments in Blatchford to achieve what we need to do. So showing the outcome between what it would be outside of Blatchford and what it is inside of Blatchford is cool steps that we can kind of relate to today. This is one a slide that I like to show. So when we're done, we'll be saving over 30,000 metric tons of greenhouse gases every year. So kind of a big deal in my mind. And this is what we're doing today. One thing I didn't mention, while we're providing the energy to heat and cool your home, we aren't providing the electricity. So heat pumps, of course, use electricity, and in Alberta, the grid is not clean. I think there's still some coal. It's being transitioned to natural gas, which is a cleaner source, but it's still not carbon neutral. So that's the one piece of the puzzle we still have to figure out. Part of our green building code in stage 1, we were very prescriptive in what insulation had to go where, what kind of windows you had to use. In stage 2, we've said model it with our prescriptive, and if you can do it a different way, go ahead. The second part of the change there is we've asked them for enough solar to offset the major appliances in the home. So it is a step in the direction of getting to true carbon neutrality. And one of our builders in stage 1 has funky roof lines that have solar that will offset. So they are carbon neutral from the beginning, meaning they'll produce more energy than they'll use in a year. So the opportunity is there. I think the multifamily parcels, meaning the 4 to 6 story or the 12 to 15, those are going to be a challenge in terms of solar. I know, over time things have progressed. I'm sure the solar panels of today are way better than they were 10 years ago. So I'm anticipating that's going to continue to carry on. So we may solve that riddle sooner than later. But I like this slide because, I said, I don't know if you heard me, grade 4 to 5 class this morning, who has cell phones, so they can understand it's almost 4 billion cell phone charges is kind of what would be offset just what we're doing today in Blatchford when we're fully built out, and all the way to like how many cars will it take off the road. So I think this is a cool slide that most people can relate to in a way. So community development. This is, again, as the developer, we have strong influence because we go away, we do our plans. This is the way the system works. I'm pretty sure across Canada, but in Edmonton for sure. So when I was on the private side, I would decide what I wanted to do. You go to council, you get it approved. On the public side, working as the city of Edmonton, but being treated like a private developer, same thing. We go away, we decide what we want the community to look like with the vision in mind. We go to council, they approve here they used an area redevelopment plan. I know those terms are different in different jurisdictions, but typically when I was in suburbia, it was an area structure plan and neighborhood structure plan. Here we have an area redevelopment plan, which is more commonplace for a neighborhood that's kind of changing. So they want to make sure if somebody buys 3 single family homes, they're putting density in the right places. So Blatchford has been, our statutory plan is an area redevelopment plan. We did a competition. This was before my time. This is the basic layout of what Blatchford's going to develop out as. So the Blatchford West is predominantly residential. Blatchford East is residential. I mentioned There's 2 LRT stops. You can see that running through the east side. So there's a little more density. There's the 12 to 15 story buildings are planned for that side. Blatchford Market is the south end. Those 2 roads, Princess Elizabeth Ave and Kingsway, are very busy roads. So even today, if we just said, no, we're doing a commercial development, probably would work because there's a lot of drive-by traffic. As I mentioned, we don't want people driving by. We want them going, staying. So when we're built out with 30,000 people living there, there'll be lots of amenity within the community. Blatchford Park is a huge park in the middle. You can see on the top, and then we've built our first storm pond, which is the south one. The north pond is going to be built fairly soon, and then a civic plaza for civic events, maybe farmers markets, things like that. So that's the general layout of Blatchford. You can see on the bottom left, stage 1. We've built stage 3, so we're stage 1, 2, and 3. We're skipping stage 4. We're going to build stage 5 this summer. So you can see we're focused on the west side to begin with, and you can see on the right some of the real pictures of things that are in there. So stage 1 amenities. Again, we want people to come to Blatchford. We want them to stay. We want them to be friends with their neighbors and walk across the street. So this is the amenity right in stage 1. You can see the storm pond with people riding their bikes around it. We built out the walkways. It is kind of dreamy. We only, I shouldn't say that. We have 45 homes occupied. So it is, there's people living in the middle of the city in this big field. It's pretty dreamy if you go there at night, because it feels like it's their own little piece of Shangri-La that's currently being developed, but at nighttime it's quiet. There's open spaces. They can go around the storm pond. You can see there's a playground in there, which obviously young families like new developments, and this is no different. There's an orchard with 5 different varietals of apple trees. We have community gardens. There's one of our low impact development. You can see the silo. So that's essentially, it's going to collect the rainwater from the neighboring multi-sites. So a 4 to 6 story building is going to drain into that. So it's really a huge rain barrel. And then the picture on the right is the air traffic control tower, which we are keeping. It's right in the middle of the first stage. The base building is I forget, 1,500 square feet. So it's going to be renovated. It was built in the 70s, so it's pretty asbestos-filled building. We are going to renovate the main floor. We're going to renovate the whole thing, but the main floor is going to be public space. So probably community leagues is what we call them in Edmonton. So community-based organizations that support things like, Scouts and Girl Guides and yoga and different things like that. So they'll probably operate the building. The tower, unfortunately, we're going to kind of remediate, take all the asbestos out, which literally the drywall has asbestos because when they built it. So that thing's going to be stripped, removed, and then we're going to cover it in some kind of a architectural panel, and it will just be a place to stand in front of and have your Instagram moment. So it won't be a come up to the top of the tower thing, because we have accessibility rules. If we can't invite the world, we can't invite everybody. So we're just going to renovate it. I'll still have a key. So if you're in Edmonton, I'll bring you up to the top. That's my sales pitch. So that's some of the highlights of stage 1 amenities. So challenges, like I said before, I heard this was an add to my presentation. Most people ask this in the questions, but so one thing I talked about, we're acting as the developer. So we still, while we're the city, we still have to go through the process that the private developer did. So one thing is engineering drawings. I'm an engineer. I'm very familiar with this. I did work for 12 years, like I said, as a private developer. So I'm kind of a fake engineer now. I still pay my dues, but I'm not doing engineering. But I sure understand the engineering drawing process. So we hire a consultant. They design our roads and stuff. If in Edmonton, there's a blue book, the standards. When I was on the private side, you would follow those standards. You'd submit them to the city. They have a 100-day target to get your drawings approved. So I can be in the ground building my stage. Edmonton, just like Ontario, you can't build sewers. Well, you could, but it'd be very expensive in the winter. So limited, May long weekend to kind of Halloween, if you're lucky, is our construction season. So you want to get that stuff done. Blatchford, we custom design, going back to my people first design concept. We custom designed the roads. We took the blue book. How wide does it need to be? It's for the fire truck, the garbage truck, the buses. How narrow can we make them? So we custom designed, we submitted it to the city, 2 years to get approval, not 100 days, which is 3 months, 2 years. So it took that was one of the challenges in stage 2, because the same people were reviewing our stage 2, and we took some of the concepts. I think it took 8 months, so much better than 2 years, but still far from the 100 days that we want. Stage 3 was a little bit quicker. So we're learning. That was, again, asking what the challenges have been. That's definitely it. Public perception is huge. It's a city-run project. It's in the news. Council challenges us. Media likes to tell you how bad you're doing. I don't know why. If you go back 2013, the last plane took off. I don't think I mentioned this, October 21st, 2020, the first people moved in. So 7 years from an active airport to people living there. I worked on the private side. I don't know what Toronto timelines are like. In Edmonton, that's fast. Like, it's fast. You know, Farmers Field to whatever you want to do, you're probably better part of, I know a company 10 years to go from like, do whatever I want, go through the approval process. The difference being they're not in the news because they're not like public. The team, I can blame the team before me. They got the business plan approved in 2014. I think it showed people would live there a year later. So of course, comparing that, I think it was a little aggressive. I could make fun of them, but I think now that I'm overseeing the project, I'm still, well, it should take 6 months to get approval, and it's 6 months later. So it never works out that way, but you don't want to take your foot off the gas. Like, I don't want to give the consultants a nod. I don't want to give other people the nod that they can, well, Tom said it's going to take 3 years. So let's take, because I know if you tell me I have 3 years, I start looking at it 2.5 years from now. So we're still aggressive, but we have people living there, so things are taking off. But public, everything from it was an airport. I have a very smart friend who, when I first got the job, told him, he says, well, you can't develop that, it's contaminated. I'm like, well, actually, you can. So there's lots of, if you've lived in Edmonton and you know about Blatchford or the city center airport, there's lots of questions around how it should be done and how it goes. And of course, where council isn't always producing media that's making you think they're in charge of it, if you know what I mean. So district energy sharing system, like I said, the initial infrastructure costs, huge investment. $660 million is what we're going to spend. That's our prediction over the lifespan of it. A big chunk of that will be offset by our utility rates. In order to get people into Blatchford, we have a fiscal policy that says you won't pay more in Blatchford than you would pay outside of Blatchford. So that leaves a challenge in terms of there's a significant chunk of money that's offset from that 660 to what we can pay for. So but council agreed. We're going to look for grants and whatnot to do it. We actually are currently, we've been accepted in a certain grant, but we still need to work through it. And like I said, when carbon taxes start to rise up, and ours is, there's no carbon tax on renewable energy. It's a positive, and our rates can kind of adjust to be tagged towards the business as usual. And the last kind of noted here is the district energy system, the market acceptance. Like I said, if there's a sustainable builder, I started asking, well, how are you going to deal with the heat pumps? And they start talking about stuff, and I think I have no idea what you're talking about, but clearly you got it. The more commonplace builders, I'm like, well, how are you going to deal with it? And they're like, my mechanical guy will figure it out. It's unusual in Edmonton. Like I said, everybody, when you tell them you don't have a furnace, you still have a gas line, because you can cook your food on gas. You can have a gas barbecue, but you can't heat your house with gas. They're like, really? And then they got to go and do the math. So some of the townhouses probably a little easier to accept because it's a one kind of unit at a time. The bigger multifamily sites, like the largest one in stage 1 would be 182 units. The condo market in Edmonton is not strong right now. So some rental builder is going to own that, and they're going to own 182 units, and they're going to have to figure out how to, heat those homes. Some of the big buildings in Edmonton do use heat pump technology, but for some reason, those two lines don't match. And those ones are obviously localized within that high-rise building. This one is an external system. So we're still getting there. We have our first multi-site actually being built on. People have asked, like, when people are living there, do you feel like you're finally going to take off? And depending on who's asking me, I will say for sure. But really the true answer is once we get our first like 4 to 6 story built, and other people are like, oh yeah, it's super location, super cool concept. We're in an infill situation, but we don't have infill challenges like, is there enough water? Is there enough power? Can the sewer accommodate this building? I think the sky will be the limit. And like I said, our first multi-site is being built on right now. So we're super excited. They're just coming out of the ground as we speak. I was there this morning. So that will really give me the, yes, we're ready to take off now. That and when interest rates come down. So if you can tell me how to control that part of the market, that would be awesome. Anyway, I think we're getting close to the end. Yes. So we're at 12:42. There's my email address. Like I said, if you have questions, email me. Lauren is, she works closely with Mel. She couldn't be here today. So Mel was happy to step in and control the slides. And it's a real offer. If you want to come and go up the tower, it's probably my favorite part of my job is taking people up the tower and pointing at stuff. We have, I usually like to say this to Calgary audiences, we have the tallest building in Canada outside of Toronto. Because the airport closed. When the airport was open, there was a height limit. The tallest we had was 33 stories forever. It was built in the 80s. Now we have the Stantec Tower, I think it's 66 stories. So it won't impress you guys because I was in Toronto. My best friend's mom drove me downtown to watch the tippy top go on the CN Tower. So I was quite proud to have witnessed that as a little kid.
Right. Thanks, Tom.
So, no problem.
This was great, and it is very exciting, and looking forward to see more from this project as it grows. Thank you so much. Yes. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.